Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome back to a new YouTube video. Hope you guys are all doing well. Today I wanted to actually just sit here and talk to you guys. I wanted to make a video kind of reflecting on my photography career thus far. And, there's probably tons of different videos out here from other people kind of explaining their experience. And that's kind of what I want to be able to do here is just sit here and kind of talk to you guys about what I've learned, certain things that I've overcome, and just reflect a little bit on the journey in hopes that, some of this information and advice might resonate with some of you guys who are looking to pursue a career in photography. I think I have the unique niche of still being pretty young. I'm only 26 years old. So for as young as I am, I've already been kind of doing photography professionally for quite some time. And I have a lot of things that I've learned over the years that I really think might be beneficial to some of you guys. So a little bit of backstory about me before we get started. I moved out at 18 years old, right after high school. Moved to Portland for a while, lived in San Francisco, Salt Lake City before moving here to LA, which I've now been here for about 5 years. And all of that's culminated to about 8 years now, which is pretty wild to think back to and kind of look at myself in the younger years and see how much I've grown. But more importantly, kind of what I've been able to overcome and how I've just kind of figured things out. When you move out at 18 years old, you don't really know anything. You think you do, but you really don't. And then each year after that, as time progresses, you learn more and more about how to run a business, how to pay taxes, how to, take pictures for a living, do what you want to do, amongst obviously many other societal and just life things that you're learning. You're just kind of experiencing the world for the first time. And again, I've been very fortunate to somehow have kept this going. I've been doing freelance photography now for 8 years without any breaks. I've kept it going. And I don't really see that stopping anytime soon. So it's been pretty exciting to kind of reflect on the journey, see where I've come, see where I'm at now versus where I used to be. It's been a pretty incredible journey so far. So the first piece of advice that I want to kind of talk to you guys about is to really trust the process. And, this is something that is just so easy to say, much harder to do. But I think for me personally, over the years, I've really kind of sunken into this and really allowed it to happen. I've allowed the career to happen. Things have taken much longer than I would have liked to. They still are. And it's really easy to get caught up in things happening quickly and, why aren't things happening tomorrow or next week, or why haven't, I gotten a certain job, or why haven't I met someone that is going to change my life or my career, like all this stuff is really easy to kind of work yourself up and overwhelm yourself. When in the reality of it is, this stuff just takes so much time to really kind of break into the industry and really, continue to grow and learn new things. It's more of a journey, than a destination. It really is. And I think you're never really going to arrive if you're doing it correctly. So taking a step back and looking at your career so far or your life, I think it's so important to understand that it just takes time. You got to really trust the process. As long as you're putting in effort and you're kind of learning new things as much as you possibly can, the process will eventually get much easier and you'll learn, new ways to do things. For myself, this has really been a big hurdle to overcome. As I mentioned, doing this at such a young age, I really had to just kind of trust myself, trust my instincts. For the longest time, stuff really wasn't happening as quickly as I wanted it to. Even when I first moved to LA, I kind of just thought I'd move here and things would just magically start working. They did not. And it's been at times definitely an uphill battle, learning how to really put myself out there, meet new people, and really just kind of build a network around myself and what I want to be doing for a living. All that stuff just takes so much time, so definitely be patient. Something that I definitely think I did pretty well throughout this career so far is really focus on relationships. And I think I've done an even better job of that since moving to LA because it really just is so easy to meet people here. Everyone's very creative. Everyone's down to collaborate. Everyone's very excited about just the creative world in general. But I did find definitely tidbits of that in other places that I've lived, namely Portland and Seattle, and even in Utah as well. I think there's really cool creative communities all over the place. You just got to really find them. Something that I didn't really realize was a lot of the work that you're going to be getting does come just from random word of mouth kind of interactions with people. Oh, so-and-so needs a photographer. I know this person. So-and-so needs a portrait photographer for this shoot. Oh, great. I know Sam, that kind of stuff. It definitely takes having a fairly large network to start to slowly kind of get work. And, the network really is one of the most important parts, and your relationships and more importantly, your character. What kind of person are you going to be? I think for me, I put so much emphasis on trying to make each relationship as good as I can and really kind of invest the time and energy into the relationships that I think are important. And so far, that's really paid off. And obviously, I'm not going to be stopping that anytime soon, but I think it's something that is definitely often overlooked. So something that I see myself and a lot of my other photography friends doing is, when work is slow, what do you do? Now, my piece of advice would be to don't just sit around when work is slow. Enjoy your free time, of course, but I think it's kind of the productive time when things are slow that really separates people from one another. Are you just going to sit around and do nothing for 6 months if you don't get a job, or are you going to try to do something new? Are you going to start a YouTube channel? Are you going to try a new style of photography? Are you going to put shoots together? Are you going to, set up coffee dates and meet new people? That kind of stuff really does start to add up over time, and it starts to show with who's actually willing to do the work when things aren't as good, when the money isn't flowing and when the jobs aren't great. That to me is the time when you can distinguish yourself from other people. So remember that. Something else that I think is incredibly important is to be humble always. Really be open to learning, be open to the idea that you don't know everything. It's easy to get ahead, once you get a few jobs, you start making a little money, you start meeting new people, you start feeling a little bit of the high of, like kind of that roller coaster effect of, you're nearing the top. It's always important to just kind of remain humble. And in my opinion, never forget that, you're constantly learning as an artist and as a professional as well. There's so many things that I've learned in the last couple of years that I had no idea how to do before. And, keeping that open mindset, keeping that mind open to learning from anyone is incredibly important. I've learned more from some of my assistants than I have from really anybody else. And understanding that, these kind of little nuggets of wisdom could be coming from literally anybody, I think it's all the more important to keep your mind open and keep your ego in check. Try to be as humble as you can and really soak in all the information that people have to offer, because there's a lot of it out there. And, YouTube obviously is a great resource, but in person with people is pretty hard to beat. So keeping that in mind, be humble and really open to learning. Another one that I find to be pretty important is to be constantly updating your portfolio and keeping your skills fresh. Now, on the portfolio side of things, obviously this is going to require you to shoot quite a bit, even when work isn't happening. I find that kind of making your own shoots, whether you're actually going to put the photos on your portfolio or not, is not necessarily important, but you're not going to be able to have fresh work unless you're shooting pretty often. And for me, I try to definitely shoot at least once a week if I can. Obviously, that doesn't happen every single week, but understanding that, the more that you practice this kind of skill that you have, the better you're going to get. And you got to keep your skills fresh. For example, there was a period of time last year where I didn't get a job for probably 5-6 months. And, I could have just sat around, but I shot quite a bit in my own personal time, whether that was on travels or setting up shoots here in LA. Keeping my skills fresh, so when the job does come around, I'm ready to roll and I haven't really lost any of those skills. Creativity is definitely a muscle, and also learning how to use your camera properly is definitely incredibly important. People definitely overlook it because cameras really do so much of it for us nowadays. But learning the ins and outs of everything that you own is so important to keep those skills fresh. The last thing you want is for, a job to finally come around and you just don't feel like you have it anymore. You don't have the creative juices flowing. So keeping that stamina alive is very important. When it comes to a work-life balance, this is also a pretty important topic. Now, there's never going to be a perfect balance of work and life. I think just accepting that is the first kind of step to success with this. But, just prioritizing the time that you do have, whether it's a lot of work, really focus on that. And when you have a ton of free time, focus on your actual life. And I think, if you do it right, you can definitely get to a pretty good, even balance. But, there's always going to be one that's suffering a little bit. That's just the reality of doing this for a living. But understanding that you can always get better and you can always prioritize things a little better. And really looking at your life, what you want to prioritize, both in your professional life and in your personal life, seeing how to fit everything into the schedule, you can definitely get it done. When it comes to jobs, in my mind, there's a few reasons that I do jobs. And, there's jobs that you do for money and there's jobs that you do for passion. And both are incredibly important, in my opinion. You got to allow yourself to kind of understand that some jobs you just got to do it for the connection. Some jobs you do it because you love it and you really believe in the vision. And then every once in a while, you're just doing it because you need some money. And, the money's good, the day rate's nice. And between those three categories, there's always a reason to take a job or to not take a job. But it's important to remember, that especially I think the passion-driven ones oftentimes have the biggest kind of potential for other hires down the road or, just more opportunities if you take it along. Oftentimes if I get a job inquiry in my inbox and it's a really interesting creative, but there's not a lot of money, I'll oftentimes try to figure out a way to make it work if it makes sense. I've had some of the smallest jobs I've ever taken lead to some of the biggest, and never think that you're too good to hop on just a really cool creative shoot with fun people who believe in the vision. There's a lot of worth and value in that. Something else that I didn't really realize recently is the idea of incorporating your own personal interests into your photography. Now, this sounds simple, but I've really tried to do this over the last several months and even maybe longer than that, maybe a year or two. And what I mean by this is everything that you're interested in doing in your own personal life, why don't you just incorporate that into your photography as well. Learn more about it, really get in depth with all the things that you're interested in. For me, it's cooking right now. It's been really fun. I've come a long way with cooking in my own personal life, and I've really started to enjoy shooting restaurants and chefs and spaces. So that's really been something that I've focused on. But that's probably ever going to be evolving. And that's the exciting part, is really whatever you're interested in at the moment, try to incorporate that somehow into your photography. Maybe you love camping, maybe you love bike riding, maybe you love basketball, maybe you love yoga. There's so many ways to kind of distinguish your own personal style, and I think incorporating your own personal interests is a great way to get started with that. Now, the last piece of advice that I have for you is trends are trends for a reason, and there's going to be so many waves of the internet and people shooting things that are quote unquote cool, but try your best to stick to your own style. You know, trends are going to be around, obviously, and there's going to be things that you want to shoot based off of what's cool right now. But in my experience over the years with photography, things are going to come and go. And your own personal style is the one thing that's actually going to stay. So try to think about how your own personal style is, growing and is affected by these trends. And just remember that you have a uniqueness in your artistic voice. It's so important to prioritize that and really let that shine. Often I find that photographers that hop on trends constantly, they're not happy. They, at the end of the day, they don't have a unique style or approach because they're just copying whatever's cool right now. So keep that in mind. Now, with all this being said, I hope that some of this advice was helpful to you guys today. I've been wanting to make a video like this for a while, so I hope that it was helpful to some of you looking to maybe start a career in photography, or maybe you're in the thick of it and you just needed some advice. If you have any more questions, though, down below, I'd be happy to answer those. And before this video wraps up, I do want to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, which is Squarespace, for sponsoring today's episode. Now, Squarespace by far is the best website builder out there, case closed. I think when it comes to creating a website, building an e-commerce product, or creating different galleries, just organizing your creative site in general, Squarespace makes it very easy to not only design, kind of pick the layout options, and just choose what you need to go on your website. For each specific use case for any artist, I think Squarespace is by far the easiest way to just get started with that. If you guys are looking to create a website for yourself, there'll be a link down in the description to receive 10% off your first website or domain purchase. Thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring this video, and thanks to you guys for watching. We'll see you next week.